Greetings, I'm Seba Heru-Ka Anu, and welcome to Kemetic Way Outreach. My topic for today is life, Ankh. I want to share a few thoughts about life from the Kemetic way of life, from the Kemetic perspective, with respect to our some current issues and topics related to life. And just a little bit of background. Our ancestors distilled the greatest gift of creation to be that of life. So throughout Kemet, we find the one symbol that is the most prolific symbol throughout the society is that of the Ankh, which itself means life. And that symbol not only means the manifestation of life, but it also indicates the quality of life, as our ancestors pursued improving the quality of life throughout their existence. Now this symbol, the symbol of life, the Ankh, or I should say the philosophy associated with the Ankh, didn't start with Kemet. It goes back to our earliest ancestors, the Twa and the Khoisan, or our ancestors of the gatherer-hunter way of life, which is several million years old. And the philosophy of improving the quality of life and pursuing an optimal quality of life was passed from one generation to the next, such that our Kemetic ancestors inherited that philosophy. Throughout the Kemetic society, which was the earliest writing society, our ancestors wrote about Ankh, life. And they wrote that Ankh is something to be respected, and that is that we should honor and pay, respect to life. We should cherish it. That it was something to be protected. It was something to be I said cherished. It was something to be pursued with respect to recreating life. Like we have the capacity as human beings to, when we cohabitate, to generate life and bring life into being. And that not only do we celebrate the life of our own human life, but that we would celebrate all life, such that the way of life, that is the faith, the religion, the spirituality of our ancestors, celebrated everything, all life, all of creation. And so from that perspective, we who celebrate the Kemetic way of life today take that as our guidance. Now, when we look around the world, and particularly when we look wherever we are, we find that we're challenged in this particular respect because most Black people on this planet are challenged to live into celebrating life, are challenged to live into living the way of optimal life, principally because, by and large, we are colonized or enslaved, or in some way thrown off course by what we refer to as the way of barbarism. And the way of barbarism principally is the way of existence that white people themselves have lived. And so what we find is that challenged by the way of barbarism, we have been deprived of resources that allow us to pursue optimal life, that we are under the thumb of oppressive and repressive and suppressive government and military organizations that prevent us from pursuing quality of life, that prevent us from creating the kind of community, social, institutional, and governmental structures that enable us to live into the way of life. As a consequence, what we see is impoverishment. As a consequence, what we see is a devaluing or devaluation of life, such that we find among the societies that are dominated and impacted, significantly impacted by the way of barbarism, what we find is war. Constant war on all levels, whether it's military war, policing war, communities at war. And it distills down even to neighborhoods that are in conflict with each other simply because they are no longer guided by the way of life, the philosophy itself of life, by the Kemetic way as we have been. And so I am sharing with us that it's our responsibility as Black people to find our way back to the way of life. And in doing so, of course, we have a great challenge in front of us. And that challenge is, even though we can so easily say that it's important for us to find our way back to the way of life, we're challenged in doing so. We're challenged in doing so because we actually are at odds with an advocate that uses force, that uses violence to prevent us from moving in that direction. And through propaganda, generally have many of us seeking a path of non-resistance to restoring the way of life. And I am saying to us that we who are pursuing the way of life must use every means and every road possible to get us back to the way of life, even such that of using force to neutralize and push out of our way those who would prohibit us from seeking the way of life. Ankh, life is the greatest gift that humanity and all of creation has. There's nothing greater than that. And that each of us every day should do as our ancestors did. They used life as a yardstick by which they measured everything, and they asked, is it life creating and is it life sustaining? They asked this of all relationships. Is it life creating and life sustaining? And that if it was a life creating and life sustaining relationship, they engaged it. If it was not, then they moved away from it and they discouraged folks from moving in that direction. We're at odds with a people who devalue life, who engage in war and killings to pursue owning and controlling resources for nothing more than just simply enriching themselves. We know from the African way of life and understanding that there is no limit to the great abundance and resource that creation gives to us. There's no limit in that regard. However, from the white way of barbarism, they have a perspective that resources and life is finite and it is something that can be hoarded and controlled. And so we must fight this. We must fight this by pursuing the way of life at all odds, at all cost, not allowing ourselves to be stopped in any kind of way. Because to pursue the way of life and to bring the way of life into being as the way that we are guided by day to day, it means that we would eliminate poverty. It means that we would eliminate competition over resources rather than sharing and generating resources in abundance, as we always have. It means that when we look out day to day, we would see cooperation as the standard by which we live versus that of war, enslavement, domination, and destruction as we currently are seeing by the way of barbarism. So I'm encouraging you to join us, those of us who are of the Tenefa Ankh community, and those of us who embrace Kemet Way, the Kemetic way of life, in pursuing the way of life and joining us in any way that you can to bring that into fruition. And so for more information about what we are doing and how we are doing it, visit our websites at kemetway.com, that's KEMETWAY.com, or also visit us at taneferank.com, that's TANEFER.com. And I am Seba Heru-Ka Anu, and thank you for joining me here for a brief episode of Kemet Way Outreach. Thank you. Have a perfect day. Ankh Uja Seneb, that means life, prosperity, and health.